Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back. Not to ancient dynasties or lost empires. Not to dusty tombs or battlefields. Nope. Tonight, we're going to the very beginning. Like, before there was even a beginning. You open your eyes, except, wait, you don't even have eyes yet. There's nothing. No light, no sound, no sky, no ground. Not even time has started ticking. It's like floating in lukewarm soup, except the soup is made of absolutely nothing. You're not standing or sitting, because standing requires gravity, and sitting requires furniture, and furniture is definitely not invented yet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your city and the current time in the comments. Let's see who's the latest night owl hanging out with us tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're drifting through the void, the kind of quiet that feels heavy. Not peaceful, not scary, just blank. Until suddenly, there's a rumble. No one knows where it comes from. Some say it's the sound of the universe sneezing for the first time. Others say it was just time finally waking up and saying, "All right, let's get on with it." And then, there he is, huge, bearded, barefoot, holding a massive axe that looks like something out of an ancient lumberjack fantasy. His name, Pangu. You're watching the first creature, maybe god, maybe cosmic contractor, to ever appear in Chinese mythology. Scholars still argue about him. Was he real? Symbolic? A metaphor for the cosmos stretching itself out of a dream? Who knows? But one thing's clear. This dude came here to build a universe, and he doesn't ease into it. Pangu takes that axe and crack, splits the chaos open like a giant cosmic egg. The light stuff floats up and becomes the sky. The heavy stuff sinks and becomes the earth. And just like that, you're no longer floating in nowhere. Now there's an up and a down. You have orientation. You could theoretically trip over something. Progress. Pangu doesn't stop there. He stands in the middle, arms stretched out, feet planted, holding heaven and earth apart like some divine forklift. Every day, the sky rises a little higher, the ground sinks a little deeper, and Pangu, he grows taller to keep up, 10 feet a day, for 18,000 years. Talk about a growth spurt. And you? You're watching from below, squinting up at this colossal figure, whose breath becomes the wind, whose voice is thunder, and whose sweat. Yeah, sorry, it rains sometimes. No one's exactly sure if this myth was passed down by early tribes, written by poets, or just humanity's best attempt to explain what the heck was going on before physics showed up. But in this story, Pangu is both the builder and the scaffold, the reason the world didn't snap shut like a bad folding chair. Then one day, he sighs. The sky is high enough, the earth is firm, his job is done. He collapses. You're standing nearby when it happens. It's not violent, not tragic. More like watching a massive tree gently fall after holding up the forest for centuries. His body will become the rivers, the mountains, the sun and moon. But we'll get to that in the next chapter. For now, you just stand there, soaking in the stillness. You realize the world you know, the one with trees and oceans and annoying alarm clocks, only exists because someone once stood still for 18,000 years, holding it together with his bare hands. Kinda makes your Monday look manageable, huh? You wake up on solid ground. It's strange. Yesterday, there was no ground, no trees, no birds, no weather apps, but now, you're lying on something that smells faintly of moss and magic. You look up, and the sky is no longer a vague light fog. It's a deep dome of soft blue, stitched together with drifting clouds, like someone hand-painted it during their lunch break. And that's when it hits you. You're walking on Pangu. Yep, this entire landscape is his final gift. The mountains are his bones, the rivers, his blood, the wind brushing your cheek. That's his last breath still rolling across the plains. His eyes became the sun and moon, his voice echoes in thunder. His hair? Well, forests. Sorry if that makes you itch. In myth, his left eye became the sun, bright, warm, relentless. His right eye became the moon, cool, watchful, changing. There's something poetic about it. Like even in death, Pangu is keeping an eye on things, literally. But as grand as this all sounds, you quickly realize one thing. The world is eerily empty. No animals, no people. Just you and a sky that doesn't blink. You wander for a while, a day, a decade. Time feels like jelly here. Eventually you hear something, a splash. You turn, and there they are. Not gods, not humans, not even creatures exactly. They're spirits, dozens of them. Some float, some slither, some sparkle. They don't speak, but you feel them thinking. These are the first spirits of the world, born from Pangu's leftovers, or maybe from his dreams. Depends on which version you believe. One of them approaches you. She's glowing slightly, like she swallowed a star. Her name? Nüwa. Now pause here for a second, because Nüwa is kind of a big deal. In later myths, she'll be called the creator of humans, the repairer of heaven, and the OG queen of I'll fix it myself. But right now she's just curious, and she's very, very bored. You hang out with her for a bit, by which I mean you mostly watch her wander around, humming to herself, and occasionally poking mountains. You can tell she's thinking big thoughts, world-level thoughts. One day, as the sun rolls lazily across the sky, Nüwa turns to you and says, well, doesn't say but implies, that she's lonely, not in a dramatic way, just she wants company, real company, something that talks back, something that stubs its toe and complains about it. So she kneels by a muddy riverbank, scoops up some clay, and starts shaping little figures, one by one, some tall, some short, some grumpy-looking. Her hands are quick and careful, like she's done this before in a dream. She breathes into each one, and boom, they move. You're watching the first humans wake up. They stretch, they blink. One of them sneezes. Nüwa giggles. You feel the world shift a little under your feet, like it just gained weight in the best possible way. But then, classic issue. Nüwa realizes shaping humans one by one takes forever. So she gets clever, dips a vine in the mud and flicks it, spraying dozens of droplets into the air. Wherever the drops land, a new person pops up like a plant breaking the surface. Instant population boom. Now, here's where things get fuzzy. Some historians think this part of the myth reflects early social hierarchies. The handcrafted humans were nobility. The splattered ones became commoners. Others say that's just overthinking a fun origin story. As always, scholars are still debating it. But what's clear is this. Nüwa doesn't just create humans. She cares about them, watches them grow, argues with them, patches them up when they fall over. She's less a goddess and more like your endlessly patient aunt who brings snacks and secretly runs the family group chat. And as night falls, yes, nights exist now, you lie back on a soft hill made from Pangu's old shoulder blade. Above you, stars blink into view, and you realize this world isn't just alive, it's caring. Morning smells like wet grass and ambition. You wake up to birdsong. Wait, birds. When did those arrive? You blink up at the sky, and sure enough, something feathered and slightly judgmental is hopping from branch to branch. You sit up, and the forest around you is fuller than yesterday. Greener, louder. Something is definitely brewing. And speaking of brewing, boom! A tremor rumbles beneath you. Not a scary one, more like the earth stretching after a long nap. You follow the sound and stumble upon a clearing where several spirits, yes, new ones, are gathered. But these guys are different from Nüwa. Bigger, flashier. One of them is literally glowing like a forge. Meet Fuxi. If Nüwa is soft clay and moonlight, Fuxi is bronze tools and hold my gourd. I have an idea. He's the spirit of logic, invention, and the guy who probably invented group projects. Together, he and Nüwa start something pretty amazing. They lay down the foundations of Yao's civilization. Fuxi is the one who goes, hey, instead of hunting each other, what if we, talked first? He invents language, which, let's be honest, is a game changer. No more pantomiming hunger or trying to explain fire with interpretive dance. People begin to name things, to understand things, and suddenly the world becomes a lot less mysterious and a lot more interesting. And just when you think that's impressive, he whips out something that looks suspiciously like a big ancient diagram, the Bagua. Yeah, that's right, the Bao 8 trigrams. Circles, lines, symbols, each one representing forces of nature, elements of the cosmos, life patterns. It looks like someone merged philosophy, weather forecasting, and an early app interface. You don't totally get it, no one really does, but it feels important. Like Fuxi is sketching out the user manual of the universe. Of course, people don't start chanting Bagua, Bagua in unison or anything. They're still figuring out how not to trip over roots. But the seed is there. The idea that life follows patterns, that the world can be understood, predicted, even balanced. That's huge. Meanwhile, Nüwa is still doing her goddess of compassion thing. She watches humans argue, get married, lose socks, invent soup. She occasionally steps in to calm things down. It's a good time. Until, one afternoon, the sky cracks. No, really. You're walking with a group of early humans, probably headed to a fish party or a storytelling circle, when you hear this low groan, like the world is about to sneeze. Then comes a tear in the heavens, a no-torn literal rip-hun in the sky. Turns out the sky had pillars, cosmic ones, and one of them, called Gong Gong, a giant water spirit with a bit of a temper, got mad and smashed into one of those pillars like a cosmic toddler throwing a tantrum. This is not a drill. The earth tilts, floods pour in, fire rains down, people scream. You duck under a tree, which immediately catches fire. Classic mistake. You're watching the world fall apart. And there's nothing anyone can do except Nüwa. Now, this is one of her most iconic moments. She sees her creation, the world, humans, life itself, dying, and she goes full repair mode. She travels far and wide, gathers 5 colored stones, melts them into a glowing paste, and begins patching the hole in the sky. It's slow, it's dangerous, but she keeps going. Then she chops off the legs of a giant turtle to use as replacement sky pillars. Sorry, turtle, and props up the heavens. The tilt of the earth remains, hence why rivers flow southeast was in many parts of China, and why the sun and moon move at an angle. But the world? Saved. And you've just watched a goddess hot glue the cosmos back together. Some scholars argue this tale is a metaphor for early natural disasters, floods, earthquakes, and humanity's attempts to explain them. Others say it's just a really good story. Either way, you're not forgetting it anytime soon. By the time the sky settles, the stars are brighter, the air is clearer, and Nüwa, exhausted but glowing, walks past you without saying a word. But you see it in her eyes. It was worth it. And so you lie down, head on a patch of moss that definitely wasn't there yesterday, and exhale. Civilization just got its first crisis and its first comeback. You wake up to the smell of millet porridge and bureaucracy. Things have escalated. The villages you wandered through yesterday, yeah, they've expanded. Way expanded. Huts are becoming brick houses. People are organizing farming teams. Some genius has even figured out irrigation with bamboo pipes. You, my friend, are now walking into the era of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Mythical rulers who didn't just rule, they laid down the blueprint of what it means to run a country. First up, Shennongs, the stum, divine farmer. Picture this. You're wandering into a field, and there's this dude with a transparent belly, not even joking, crouching over a weird plant. He eats it, waits, then calmly writes, causes diarrhea into a notebook made of bark. Shennong is that guy, the agricultural MVP. He's credited with inventing the plow, hoe, irrigation, and even the farmer's market system. Okay, maybe not the last one, but he'd definitely support it. More importantly, he tests hundreds of herbs and on himself to figure out which ones heal and which ones absolutely ruin your afternoon. You try to keep up with him, but every 5 minutes he's chewing something new and making a face like he just licked a bitter toad. Still, thanks to him, people stop starving and start storing food. Farming becomes a thing, not just a hope and pray situation. ONT, that's also his invention, at least according to the legend. Supposedly, Shennong was boiling water under a tree, because germs, even in myths, and leaves fell in. He drank it, felt refreshed, and boom. Tea culture begins. But soon the ground under your feet starts to shift, literally. You follow the tremors to find a new ruler rising, Huangdi, the canker yellow emperor. Not just a warrior, not just a thinker. He's the whole dynasty in one man. If Shennong was the guy who invented farming, Huangdi is the guy who turned it into an empire. He brings in government, currency, law, calendar systems, and even the Kaiserkompass, his wife. Yes, wife. Lezu Maon is credited with discovering Chaozhou silk after a silkworm cocoon dropped into her tea and unraveled like the world's fanciest accident. Silk, by the way, is going to become a huge deal later. You're witnessing fashion history here. But don't be fooled. Huangdi isn't all spreadsheets and rituals. He's also known for fighting the legendary battle of Hajuolu against Chu, a warrior with a buffalo head, metal horns, and a face only mythology could love. It's a chaotic battle. Chu brings fog machines, lightning storms, and bronze weapons that make your kitchen scissors look like toys. Huangdi, he counters with strategy, technology, and a mystical compass chariot that literally points north mid-battle. We still don't know how that thing worked. Archaeologists call it questionable, but impressive. In the end, Huangdi wins. Chiu falls, but he's still worshipped in some regions as a god of war. See, history isn't always about winners and losers. Sometimes it's about who ends up on incense sticks. Now here's something fun. The line between myth and how prehistory storegrass in China is super blurry. Some scholars think Huangdi might have been a real tribal leader whose deeds were mythologized over time. Others think he's entirely symbolic, a stand-in for the birth of Chinese identity. Either way, his story sets a precedent. Leadership isn't just about ruling. It's about inventing, what ruling looks like. And just when you're adjusting to this empire-building vibe, you stumble upon something strange, a massive bone carved with symbols. Wait, is that a Proto character? Yes, it is. You're seeing the early rumblings of Yao Chinese writing, from etched symbols to full-on oracle bones. Language, once used to name things, is now being used to record things. Dreams, laws, crop yields, ghost complaints. And just like that, memory becomes portable. You stop and breathe. This land has moved from mud huts to celestial calendars in what feels like 5 days. But to the people living here, it's a slow, grinding climb toward structure, meaning, and something that looks a lot like the world we know. Also, a guy just walked by riding a dragon-shaped boat. You wave. He waves back. Totally normal. The air smells different here. Smoother. Richer. You're not entirely sure how long you've been walking, but your sandals are finally breaking in, and the sky is a soft watercolor of early civilization. Bamboo grows thick, bronze glints on the horizon, and somewhere in the distance, bells are ringing. Congratulations, you've made it to the Qi dynasty, or at least what some historians believe could have been Ointou. The first official dynasty in China, emphasis on believe. See, the Xia are the Hunger Loch Ness monster of Chinese history. Constantly mentioned, widely discussed, but until recently, no solid proof they ever existed. Ancient texts like the Bamboo Annals and records of the Grand Historian go on and on about them, but archaeology's been giving them the side eye for decades. Only in recent years, with discoveries at Erlitu, have we started to piece together their possible existence. But for you, walking into this world, the Xia are very real, and they're busy. You find yourself in a settlement where the homes have stone foundations. That's new. People are casting bronze, like it's their full-time job, making tools, vessels, and ceremonial objects that look like alien artifacts with intimidating handles. You hear the name, Yu, the Great. Whispered like a god king, some call him the Po, founder of the Xia. Others a mythic engineer who tamed the floods. Taming floods might sound like a boring public works project, but in ancient China, it's basically divine intervention. Floods aren't just annoying, they're catastrophic. They wipe out crops, drown whole families, erase years of labor. So when Yu comes along with his radical strategy of digging channels to redirect water, instead of just blocking it, like his dad tried and failed, people lose their minds. In a good way. Here's the cold little nugget of weirdness. Legends say Yu was so devoted, he passed by his house 3 times without going inside, even when his wife was in labor. What a guy, terrible husband, great engineer. But beneath this watery heroism, something else is brewing. Hereditary rule. Yu, despite his whole I serve the people brand, ends up handing power to his son. This shift, from meritocracy to monarchy, and feels subtle now, but it changes everything. You're no longer in a land of wise sages or tribal consensus. You're in a land where power is passed down. Like a family recipe, and not everyone's thrilled about that. You hear whispers among the elders, grumbles about the erosion of virtue, the rise of corruption. Because as the Xia dynasty grows, so do its problems. Successive rulers become more indulgent. There's feasting while peasants starve. Bronze vessels get fancier while roads fall apart. You know how it goes. By the time you reach Jai, the last Jia king, things have gone full-blown soap opera. Yi is said to have built a lake of wine, not a fountain, a whole lake, and he made people row boats across it. Just for kicks. His queen, Mo Shi, is painted in the records as the ancient world's worst girlfriend, cheering as prisoners are tortured, rolling her eyes at music that's too happy. Now, is this accurate? Hard to say. History often demonizes the last ruler of a fallen dynasty to make the revolution feel justified. Some scholars believe Ji's villainy is greatly exaggerated, part political smear campaign, part poetic closure. Still, the people are done. The Xia's decline opens the door for a new player, the Po Shang dynasty, and oh boy, are they organized. But before you even get to their gates, you notice something else, an evolution not in bronze or power, but in a ritual ska. The Xia were all about kings and floods and dynasties, but now you're seeing ancestral shrines, sacrificial altars, a system of belief that feels less tribal and more state-sanctioned. You're stepping into a world where ritual becomes law. You take a sip of millet wine offered by a traveling merchant. It burns a little. He tells you a joke about you the Great's refusal to take PTO. You laugh politely and keep walking. The road ahead is lined with bones, oracle bones. The Shang are calling. You're not sure exactly when it happened, but the world feels different now, like someone tightened the strings holding everything together. The air has a quiet tension to it, the kind you only notice when you're walking into a place where everything means something. A crack on a bone, a smear of blood, a shape in the sky. Welcome to the Haijin, Shang Dynasty. At worst, ritual is government. And as bronze is currency. Identity and possibly religion, all smelted into one glorious, slightly terrifying age. As you approach the capital, likely Yin. And if you're arriving toward the end of the Shang era, you immediately feel the buzz. This place hums with order, rows of buildings, huge palace foundations, granaries that could feed thousands. And towering above all that, temples. So many temples. You're not just in a kingdom anymore. You're in a cosmic hierarchy, where humans are squarely in the middle, below the ancestors, above the millet. Here's your first surprise. Communication. Actual, readable, written Chinese characters, carved painstakingly into Dao oracle bones, turtle shells and ox scapulae that now function as a hotline to the divine. You're watching a diviner press a hot rod against one of these bones. It cracks, loud, dry, and sharp, and he leans in, reading the break like a fortune teller reads tea leaves. Will it rain tomorrow? Will the harvest be good? Will the king's toothache go away? Every important decision flows through these divinations, and each question, answer, and outcome is recorded. Congratulations, you've officially entered the historical period of China, because we finally have writing that ties events to dates. Archaeologists adore this stuff, and those beautiful bronze vessels you admired back in the Xia, the Shang just upped the ante. These things are heavier, taller, and covered in mysterious designs. Taoti masks with bulging eyes and symmetrical curls that stare into your soul. No one knows exactly what they mean. Some say spirits, others say stylized animals. A few brave scholars admit, we still don't know, it's weird, okay? You attend a royal banquet. Well, more like you sneak in. It's less party, more power play. The nobles clink cups filled with fermented mash while debating crop rotations and ancestor appeasement. A general boasts about subduing rebellious tribes along the Yellow River. The king, probably Wu Ding, if you're lucky, says little but wears so much bronze he probably needs help standing up. Here's something else to make you blink. The Shang kings worship their ancestors like gods, and they talk to them regularly, not metaphorically, literally. Through divination, the deceased royal ancestors give advice on war, agriculture, and family planning. It's like having a ghost board of directors. But not everyone in Shang society is toasting their ghost grandpas. As you wander beyond the elite compounds, you see the layers. The artisans, whose entire lives revolve around metalwork or ceramics. The mine farmers, Hassan bent double in the fields. The Mao slaves, taken in war, forced to build and die for the rituals of a court they'll never see. And then there's human sacrifice. Yeah, it's not a bedtime story highlight, but we can't tiptoe around it. The Shang practiced it, often. Prisoners of war, servants, even concubines were sometimes buried alive or slaughtered to accompany kings into the afterlife. The idea was loyalty to your lord extended beyond death. And frankly, they weren't asking for volunteers. Historians still debate how widespread this was. Some argue the elite used it sparingly, mostly for major events like royal burials. Others think it was disturbingly routine. Either way, you're reminded that this glorious age was built on rituals that demanded real blood. Still, it's hard not to be awed. The Shang had astronomy, music theory, chariots, and a fully functioning bureaucracy. They were cosmopolitan in their own way, trading with distant tribes, exchanging jade and ideas, and laying down the cultural roots of what would become one of the longest continuous civilizations on Earth. And then it happens. One day, the oracle bones start asking different kinds of questions, not about rain or harvests, but about enemies within. The cracks point to betrayal. The ancestors fall silent. A general named Zi Lu, better known to history as King Wu of Zhou, begins to rise in the west. You're there when the court starts to fracture. The last Shang king, Dishan, is complicated. Some say he was a brilliant strategist who lost control. Others say he was a decadent monster who built a pond of wine and danced naked with tigers. Seriously, that pond of wine story makes a second appearance. It's like the go-to slander for doomed kings. What's true? What's legend? Scholars are still debating that, sipping their own modern wine, probably not in a pond. What's undeniable is that the Zhou army grows bold, and Dishin grows paranoid. And when the armies finally clash at the Enda Battle of Muye, you feel the weight of the Shang's centuries-long rule coming to an end. As the fire spreads through the Shang palaces, the bronze masks stare out, unblinking, and you walk on toward the age of Famadi. Heaven's mandate. You're standing in a field where the sky feels like it's holding its breath. All around you, banners ripple, horses snort, and somewhere off in the distance, drums begin their slow, ominous beat. Welcome to the Zhou dynasty. It's 1046 BCE. The Shang have just fallen, and the man riding at the front of the army, the one with a serious look and a reputation for patience, is Taoyi King Wu of Zhou. He's not just leading a rebellion, he's founding a whole new world order. You're about to witness a seismic shift in Chinese history, because the Zhou didn't just conquer a kingdom, they changed the Kaun story fan of why kings rule at all. Here's how they sold it. The Shang lost heaven's favor because they were corrupt, and the Zhou? We've got that divine endorsement now. Sorry, not sorry. They call it the Shi mandate of heaven. A simple but genius bit of PR. Unlike Europe's divine right of kings, which says rulers are chosen by God, and that's that, the mandate of heaven comes with terms and conditions. You get to rule until you mess up. Then the gods revoke your mandate like a disappointed boss revoking your office key card. Natural disasters, famines, invasions, those are signs heaven's trying to ghost you. The Zhou claim they're not just here to party with bronze and beat drums. They're on a Chuo moral mission. And for a while, It works. They build a new capital at Sanhaojing, west of the old Shang heartland, and start organizing this sprawling territory into manageable chunks. That's where feudalism enters the chat. You see a system forming, something that looks suspiciously like Game of Thrones without the dragons. The king grants land to relatives and loyalists, who become regional lords. They govern their domains, collect taxes, and provide soldiers when the king needs backup. On paper, it's a tidy hierarchy. But you know where this goes, right? Give ambitious men land, weapons, and time, and eventually, someone's going to decide they're the king now. Still, in the early Zhou period, especially the first couple centuries, it's not all backstabbing and suspicion. This is a golden age of ritual and poetry. And you get a front row seat. You hear the rhythm of bronze bells and stone chimes at temple ceremonies. You watch scribes compiling what would become the Pao, Book of Songs, a collection of over 300 poems that range from love ballads to political satire. My favorite, a song where a noblewoman basically says, "If you ghost me one more time, I will personally paddle across this river and end you." Courtship, ancient China style. And while Confucius hasn't been born yet, the Zhou are already laying the groundwork for his whole vibe. There's a huge emphasis on lai agaost, or ritual propriety, knowing your place in the social hierarchy, bowing the right way, speaking with the correct tone. It's like one big group project where everyone pretends to love the rules. Here's a slightly weird cold shower fact. The Zhou kings loved to show how just and benevolent they were, but they also continued human sacrifice for a while. Not on Shang levels, but still. Burial sites from early Zhou periods include chariots, horses, and yes, the occasional companion sent to the next world. Scholars argue whether this was a continuation of Shang ritual or a desperate flex to legitimize their rule. Either way, still creepy. As the centuries roll on, the system starts to strain. The kings at the center lose influence. The lords in the provinces get richer, tougher, more independent. And then, in 771 BCE, it happens. The capital is sacked by a coalition of angry nobles and barbarian tribes. King Yu, yep, that's his name, had made the classic royal mistake, dumping his queen for a new flame and lighting the emergency beacon as a prank to impress her. The nobles do not laugh. They show up with actual armies. You stand in the smoldering ruins of Haojing as the court flees east to Kuas. Lul Woyang saw it. This marks the start of what historians call the Paina Eastern Zhou, a two-part saga that goes from mildly chaotic to everyone is stabbing everyone else constantly. The first part, the Bagua Spring and Autumn period. Despite the peaceful name, it's like a prequel to the Warring States era. You have dozens of small states, each run by ambitious lords, all technically loyal to the Zhou king. But let's be honest, they mostly ignore him now. It's like your boss is still CC'd on emails, but nobody listens to what they say. Some of these states rise to prominence. Qi Hao, Jin Chitao Chu, Qin, and Lo among them. Their rulers start calling themselves Hegemon Hai, or Be'e, which basically means we're not the king, but we act like it. In this beautiful mess, something extraordinary starts to bloom. Philosophy. You meet a parade of thinkers wandering from state to state, offering rulers advice on how to govern better, or at least not get murdered by their cousins. These are the days of Confucius Ven Laozi, and other heavyweights you'll get to know more deeply soon. But here's the irony. While the Zhou Empire cracks and splinters, the Chinese cultural identity grows stronger. Even as states bicker, they speak the same language, revere the same classics, and bow to the same rituals. It's as if the body is failing, but the soul is becoming immortal. The Western Zhou dreamed of unity through ritual. The Eastern Zhou is about surviving chaos with style. And the chaos? Oh, it's only getting started. You wake up in a crowded marketplace. The air smells like horse sweat, fried dough, and ambition. It's the 5th century BCE, and welcome to the Haoan, Warring States period. China's messiest, bloodiest, and weirdly most intellectually productive breakup phase. There are 7 major players now: Qin, Chu, Qi, Yan, Han, Zhao, and Wei. And none of them are pretending to like each other anymore. The Zhou King? Still technically alive, but he's about as relevant as your middle school MySpace page. Every state is fortifying walls, building massive armies, and investing in Nao's new tech, like iron weaponry, crossbows, and chariot replacements. You see roads being laid like arteries across the land, not for trade, but for Henbaomu troop movements. Everyone's waiting for a chance to strike. And here's the twist. In the middle of this geopolitical Hunger Games, a wave of philosophers pop up like wildflowers in a battlefield. You're walking past one of them now. He's got a scraggly beard, a robe too long for his sandals, and he's talking in parables about virtue, ritual, and the way. That's Confucius, Anorkyam Kongzi. Though he's technically already passed away, died in 479 BCE, but his students are still out here, grinding hard to make sure his ideas don't get lost in the noise. Confucius wasn't about flashy tactics or big battles. He just wanted people to be decent. Respect your parents. Bow properly. Know your place, behave well, and don't start wars unless you absolutely have to. Unfortunately, this is not that kind of time. In another corner of the political jungle, a quieter figure writes in riddles. Lao Tzu, the OG Taoist, is all about Wu Wei, doing without doing. He'd tell you to flow like water, avoid conflict, and stop clinging to rigid structures. The soft overcomes the hard, he says, while warlords everywhere scream, hold my wine, and then you run into Dikriyan Feizi. No robes, no flowers, just cold logic and a scroll that basically says, people suck, so build a system so tight they can't mess up even if they try. This is Koski legalism. And it's the rising star of the era. No illusions about human nature, no dreams of inner virtue, just laws, rewards, and not punishments. Like a government built on Excel spreadsheets and fear. Spoiler alert, Chin's gonna love this guy. Here's a cold fact to sit with. Over 100 different schools of thought flourished in this time. Historians call it the 100 schools of thought. Even though it was more like several dozen, still, the creativity was unreal. It's like a giant TED Talk, but with swords and occasional annexation. And the states themselves, they start acting like corporate empires mid-merger. Each one wants to swallow the rest. Nüwa begins rising from the west, militaristic, efficient, and all about legalism. Their ministers cut through red tape like butter. They're not interested in flashy ritual or aristocratic traditions, just results. Chu, to the south, is huge and culturally vibrant, sort of the artsy powerhouse with its own dialect and divine swagger. They've got style, they've got poetry, but they also have a lot of internal drama. Qi is wealthy and educated, home to the famous Jixia Academy, where philosophers from all schools argue politely, and sometimes not so politely, while sponsored by nobles. Think ancient China's version of Oxford meets a chaotic coffee house. Meanwhile, Zhao Qiuos innovates cavalry warfare by hiring nomadic horse archers from the steppes. And Huoking, Wei, and Yan'an have their moments too, but they're increasingly squeezed between giants. And here's a weird little fact for your pillow thoughts tonight. Some of these states started Okiti, fake surrenders, just to spy, sabotage, or stall the other side. Like that one time Wei offered friendship to Han, and then accidentally invaded 2 months later. Diplomacy was just a pause button on conquest. By the late 4th century BCE, war isn't an occasional burst. It's a way of life. Cities are razed, entire populations are relocated, armies of 100,000 are common. The idea of a centralized, unified China feels like a bedtime story. Until you look west, because Qin Ween is watching, always watching. They're not the biggest or oldest state, but their chancellors are brilliant, their laws are ruthless, and their king is getting bolder. He's surrounded by ministers like Shangyang, who reorganizes Qin society like a ruthless systems analyst. Peasants get land if they farm it well. Soldiers get promoted for body count, and nobles lose their power if they can't deliver. It's brutal, but it works. By the time you close your eyes at night, you've marched through 10 different states, overheard 3 debates on whether humans are born good or evil, and survived at least 1 siege. This is the Warring States period, where kings fall, thinkers rise, and somewhere a boy named Ho Ying-jeng is growing up with very big plans. The year is 247 BCE, and you're standing on a windy hilltop, overlooking a city wrapped in stone walls and quiet tension. You're in Shenyang, the capital of Qin, and the kid on the throne, he's just 13. Meet Ying Zheng, awkward teenager now, but history will know him as Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. He just inherited one of the most efficient, militaristic states the ancient world has ever seen. Think of Qin as that kid in class who doesn't talk much but aces every exam and builds a siege weapon for extra credit. While the other 6 states have been jabbing at each other like squabbling siblings, Qin has been training, organizing, and building roads wide enough to march entire armies through the mountains. And Zheng? He didn't come to play. He starts with Mam, the weakest of the 7. It folds like a card tower in a light breeze. Then Zhao Saidshens. They've got guts, cavalry, and a legacy, but Qin hits them with a cold, methodical grind. 1 city falls, then another. The famed General Li Mu Yihao, Zhao's last hope, gets assassinated. Some say it was an inside job. Some say Qin bribed someone. Historians still debate it, but either way, checkmate. Wei Ong goes next, then Chu, which takes a bit longer. They're stubborn, rich, and culturally proud, but Qin uses a classic tactic: bribe one of their best generals to defect, and boom, door wide open. By 222 BCE, the map is shrinking. Only Chai remains, off on the coast, sipping tea and pretending it can avoid the storm. Spoiler, it can't. By Haodu, 221 BCE, it's official. For the first time in recorded history, China is reunified under one ruler. You, standing in the dusty street of a freshly renamed capital, are watching the birth of an empire. And Zheng, he drops the old titles like king. Too basic, too small. He invents a brand new one. Huangdi, emperor. Specifically, Shi Huangdi, or first emperor. He doesn't plan to be the last. Now that he's in charge, he goes full empire mode. Roads, standardized. Currencies, unified. Writing system, regulated down to the last stroke. Cart axle widths, all the same. Why? Because logistics, baby. You can't control 5,000 kilometers of mountains, rivers, and rice paddies unless your carts fit on the same ruts. He also introduces something that sounds boring, but is low-key revolutionary. the Wenpon Taostand prefectural system. No more feudal lords playing Game of Thrones. Now officials are appointed directly by the emperor and rotated regularly so they don't build local power bases. Smart, ruthless, extremely legalist. You take a step into a marketplace and realize you're in the middle of history's greatest social engineering experiment. But it's not all order and efficiency. Oh no, Qin Shi Huang is also deeply, profoundly paranoid. He survives multiple assassination attempts, once by a famous swordsman carrying a map with a blade hidden inside. Shout out to Jing Ke, who gets within inches before being taken down. That leaves a mark. He starts traveling in secret, builds decoy convoys, uses fake names, and then there's the immortality thing. Yes, he starts sending expeditions to find the Andi elixir of life. One story claims a magician told him it existed on a mystical island guarded by sea monsters. Zheng sends ships. They never come back. He keeps searching. He might even be taking mercury pills because someone told him they might work. Spoiler, they didn't. Meanwhile, let's talk about that wall. No, not the one you're thinking of. The Great Wall wasn't built from scratch. It was connected. Zheng ordered the linking of existing fortifications built by former warring states into a mega wall to keep out northern nomads. It's less single wall you can see from space, and more series of border defenses and watchtowers. But it's still a feat of engineering. Tens of thousands of workers, many of them convicts or conscripts, who died during the construction. There's even a folktale about a woman named Meng Jiang-Nus, whose husband dies building the wall, and her grief brings a section of it crashing down. It's legend, sure, but it tells you a lot about the cost. Oh, and while you're standing in awe at Qin's achievements, Zheng is planning his final trick. A mausoleum unlike anything the world's ever seen. Underground palaces, rivers of mercury, yes, really, booby traps to protect his body, and, of course, the terracotta army. Thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, each with unique features and hairstyles. You sneak into the tomb chamber before it's sealed, and it's like walking into a silent, eternal battlefield. Still today, archaeologists haven't opened the actual tomb chamber itself, partly because of concerns about preservation, partly because, well, liquid mercury readings are real. And then, in 210 BCE, after 2 decades of ruling with iron, laws, and increasingly shaky health, Qin Shi Huang dies. Cue national panic. He didn't plan succession very well. His second son, with help from a manipulative eunuch and a power-hungry prime minister, forges a will and takes the throne. What follows is rebellion, assassinations, and bureaucratic chaos. The Qin dynasty? It lasts only 15 years. But here's the thing, it worked. It left a blueprint, a foundation. Every dynasty after, Han, Tang, Song, they all build on what Qin started. And the title, Emperor? That sticks around for the next 2 millennia. So you look around. You've seen states rise, philosophers argue, roads paved, and walls raised. The kid you met on the throne turned into a man who reshaped a civilization. And somewhere, beneath a silent hill near modern Xi'an, he still lies surrounded by clay soldiers, waiting. You're standing in the warm haze of a late summer dawn, the dust of war finally beginning to settle. The Qin dynasty has just collapsed in a spectacular fireball of rebellion, betrayal, and way too much centralization, and honestly, it feels like déjà vu. But tonight, you're not going back to war. Tonight you're going to watch something quieter, but no less powerful. The Menko birth of a new order, one that would last 4 centuries. and leave an imprint so deep that even today people still call themselves Han Chinese. Yes, welcome to the Maotan Han dynasty. The Qin's death left a vacuum, and into that vacuum walks a man named Liu Bangsawa. You meet him in a tavern, probably half drunk, feet on the table, talking way too loudly for someone who's technically on the run. He's from Tianyin peasant stock, formerly a young, low-level official in the Qin bureaucracy, basically the guy who used to escort prisoners. Charming, pragmatic, and kind of lazy, but oddly good at rallying people. His rival? Zhang Yuo, a nobleman, a brilliant general, and a total drama magnet. The two men are fire and ice. Zhang Yu has the muscles and the legacy. Liu Bang has the people sake and an underrated skill for Tao surviving. Seriously, if history were a game of dodgeball, Liu Bang would be that guy who somehow never gets hit and ends up winning the whole match. The Civil War lasts 4 years. Zhang Yu wins most of the battles, but Liu Bang wins the Bai War of Hearts and Rice Bowls. By Anuprin 202 BCE, Zhang Yu loses everything, including his own life, and Liu Bang walks into the capital, unshaven, muddy, and now the Kaoming Emperor of Hanhan. He calls himself Emperor Gaozu, but let's be real, he's still Liu Bang, and he starts the Han dynasty not by tearing down everything the Qin built, but by softening it. Legalism, still there, but no longer the only voice in the room. Enter Confucianism. Remember those old scrolls about respect, order, and loyalty you heard about back in chapter 5? Yeah, they're back, and this time, they're in the imperial syllabus. You're watching the first emperor in Chinese history to realize, hey, maybe ruling through sheer terror isn't sustainable. So he mixes the Qin's centralized systems with Confucian, morality-based governance. And it's like pairing a strong espresso with a calming herbal tea. Bit weird, but weirdly effective. Under Liu Bang, and especially under his successors like Emperor Wen and Emperor Jing, things begin to stabilize. Taxes go down, laws become less harsh, agriculture expands, and the people, finally, breathe. But it's under Emperor Wu, Liu Bang's great-grandson, that the Han dynasty becomes a full-blown superpower. You're now walking into a court filled with scholars, generals, and astronomers. Emperor Wu is ambitious. He wants to expand, standardize, and explore. He sets his sights outward, to the west. And here's where things get interesting. Because one day, a diplomat named Zhang Qian sets out to make contact with distant allies. He's captured by nomads, held for 10 years. Escapes, gets captured again, escapes again. Eventually, he makes it to Central Asia. And when he comes back, skinny, scarred, and with the best stories, he brings news of exotic goods, like horses that sweat blood, probably due to a parasite, but still cool imagery, in kingdoms far beyond China's borders. This, my friend, is the beginning of the Silk Road, Alaosal. You're now part of an empire that spans from the Yellow River to the edge of Persia. Goods start flowing. Silk, jade, paper, tea, from China to the west. In return, you get more glassware, grapes, spices, and 1 or 2 new religions tagging along the way. Back at home, technology is booming. You see innovations like the can seismograph, the can wheelbarrow, and most famously, endem paper. Not papyrus, not parchment, real honest-to-goodness paper, light, foldable, and perfect for bureaucracy, which the Han absolutely love. The civil service exam system gets its humble start here, too. It's not nationwide yet, but the seeds are planted. You can imagine some kid 100 years from now sighing into his ink brush as he studies Confucian texts for an exam that will decide his whole career. Spoiler, that becomes very real. And culturally, the Han solidify what it means to be Chinese. Language, rituals, ancestral worship, filial piety, they all get shaped into a durable cultural identity. You eat dumplings during the winter solstice. You write poems in 5-character lines. You refer to foreigners as barbarians, but also trade with them. It's complicated. But hey, not everything's perfect. Later Han emperors become less hands-on. Eunuchs start meddling. Landlords grow too powerful. Peasant revolts simmer. Remember the yellow turbans? They're coming. History moves in cycles, and as the dynasty stretches into its 2nd century, cracks begin to show. But that's for another time. Right now, you're sitting under a lacquered pavilion, sipping tea as red lanterns sway gently overhead. The empire is vast, its roads are humming, and the legacy of Qin has become the own heartbeat of Han. You've walked through centuries of war, philosophy, rebellion, and unification. You've seen scholars clash, emperors rise, dynasties fall, and ideas that outlived their founders. And here, at the end of the road, you realize this wasn't just history. It was a mirror of power, of people, of what we build and what we break. So close your eyes. Let the quiet settle. You're already part of the story. And now, as the final lantern flickers low and the wind outside your imaginary window sighs through ancient bamboo groves, it's time to slow everything down. You've journeyed through dusty battlefields and candlelit courtrooms, trudged alongside rebels and sat among philosophers. You've watched dynasties rise like the morning mist and collapse like tired sandcastles at dusk. But right now, none of that matters. Right now, you're not a warrior or an emperor or a peasant hauling millet through mountain roads. You're just you, lying there, maybe under a soft blanket, your phone still faintly glowing, your eyelids a little heavier than they were an hour ago. History has this funny way of making the world feel huge and small at the same time. All those lives, all those moments, they happened. Real people, real choices, real heartbreak, real tea spilled, sometimes literally, sometimes politically. But as vast as it was, every moment in that timeline led quietly to this one, right here. You've just wandered through the bones of empires, through whispers carved into silk scrolls, and echoes that still shape your day-to-day, whether you notice them or not. The words you speak, the paper you write on, the calendar you follow, all of it touched by those dusty stories. So take a long, deep breath, the kind that makes your shoulders drop and your thoughts stop racing. You don't need to remember every date or emperor's name. Just remember the feeling of curiosity, of wonder, of quiet connection with people who lived so long ago, yet somehow don't feel so distant after all. Now, let the echoes fade. Let the stories blur into dreams. And let yourself rest. Now, good night.